I'm Gavriella Schuster, and I started at Microsoft in November of 1995 and left in September of 2021. Over the course of my career, almost 26 years, I had 14 different jobs, and I crossed over 6 different disciplines. So I went from worldwide operations into worldwide marketing, into enterprise services, consulting services, into licensing, into the Windows client organization, doing some mergers and acquisitions, leading through Windows 7, and then moved into cloud and enterprise back when Azure was just a $10 million a year product. And I left when we had about $500 million. I was leading a portfolio of about $7 billion in enterprise and cloud business for the U.S. And then I went to revive Microsoft's partner ecosystem for the cloud and was able to turn over 90% of the ecosystem to be focused on cloud services, help build out the Azure marketplace and co-selling motion that Microsoft has with partners. I was born in Natick, Massachusetts, which is just a small community about 15 miles outside of Boston. I am the middle child. I have a younger brother and an older sister, and we're each about 4 years apart. And my parents gave us everything. I played the violin since I was 5 years old. I did dance classes and I went horseback riding. I wanted to be a genetic engineer. And so I was looking for schools that had programs around genetics, and University of Michigan was one of the few that had that. It was a lot of agricultural engineering, right? It was, how do you make the best tomato? How do you make watermelons with no seeds? So I went to the career counseling office and I was like, so if I don't want to do this anymore, what can I do? And so they looked through all of my credits and they were like, well, psychology. So I took a bunch of career, what am I good at tests, right? Like counseling tests. And out of that, they came back and they said, management. You'd be really good at management. So I started applying for jobs that were called management training. And ultimately, I chose working for Cigna Health Insurance because their management training program was practical. They actually had you leading people from day one. And they had a program where they moved you around to different roles, leading different people. I had a number of friends that worked at Microsoft and they liked it. And at the time though, I was like an all Mac person, but what I had been doing at Adobe was to outsource their customer support, right? So I had a lot of experience in working with third-party organizations, helping them set up, helping them get ready, working on a lot of the IT tech side, the operations side of what needed to be done for all of our colors and kind of tier 1, tier 2 to be outsourced, and then for us to take the tier 3. And Microsoft was at a stage, as I mentioned earlier, that they were just creating the regional operations centers and didn't really know what to do. Microsoft had no customer support, right? At that time, everything was outsourced to the OEMs, and Microsoft never took a customer phone call. And so the organization was like, we don't really know how to do any of this. So Microsoft was launching Windows 95. The leadership knew that if they were going to have a product, they actually did need to provide support directly, and everything couldn't just be done through the OEM. And at the same time, they had 35 countries and they were continuing to expand, and they knew it was a little out of control. It was a little Wild West. Literally, a marketing manager in, say, Germany would decide who they were going to partner with, how they were going to partner with them. They would set a price for what it meant to partner with Microsoft. That became their marketing budget. They would decide what they were going to do for them, And you had some of these larger partners like Dell, like HP, who were not happy with having to work with 35 different marketing managers who all had different requirements and wanted different things from them. They wanted to have a relationship with Microsoft. So what I'm most proud of is that a lot of the programs and the systems that we set up stood the test of time. When I came back in to revive the partner organization, I realized that a lot of the things that I had done to create the partner program were still the way things were done. And I was like, well, okay, on the one hand, I'm really proud that it's lasted this long. On the other hand, man, it's time to do things different. One of the things that I had done was when we were launching SQL 7, that was our first version of SQL that we felt could be department or enterprise ready, right? The first time we could ever compete with Oracle. And so we needed to have database administrators. So at that time, I had moved from operations to marketing to run the whole of the partner programs and the training programs. And so creating a training program to recruit Oracle DBAs to be SQL DBAs was kind of part of my remit. And so I created a program where I thought we could train 20,000 SQL DBAs. So we had to do a compete recruit motion, and we had to have specialized skilling. And so as part of that, I created a program with our solution providers, with our training centers, where we would give them a voucher. We had a centralized registration system that we built, and then we would push all of their students to them. We would pay them a lot less because we were taking the overhead of acquisition out of it, and they would do this training that we had created. And so, 20 years, 25 years later, there's still these training vouchers. We're still running programs like that. Makes me very proud. Bill was amazing, right? He had the vision from very, very early on that, his mission was to put a computer on every desk. As we started to grow up, we started to transform in our thinking from individual people to organizations. We wanted every organization to be able to give their people a computer and to be able to take the backbone of their organizations off of the mainframes and really back into the empowering individual people. I went from doing the enterprise licensing into the Windows client team. I worked there for about four years or so. And then I came back into the U.S. subsidiary to run our enterprise and cloud business. At the time, it was more enterprise than cloud, right? It was really about, I was responsible for SQL Server, System Center, Windows Server, and this new product that we were bringing to market called Azure. So I came over to help us win the battle against VMware on server virtualization. And basically, that was the necessary step, I think, for people to understand what the cloud could be. At the time, AWS is actually one of our best partners because they were a hoster. And I was responsible for our hoster ecosystem as part of my job. What they had figured out how to do with infrastructure as a service was how to not just co-locate, but actually merge the workloads themselves and be more efficient in the management of those boxes and separate out tenants, but still manage them centrally. And I said to our technology team, I was like, we need infrastructure as a service. Because if we want to compete, we're not going to get customers to move to platform as a service until they trust us for infrastructure as a service. Because they're not going to build a new application on our technology if they haven't actually used our technology for their existing software. Getting market traction for Microsoft around the cloud was really hard. We had we had Office, right? And so customers equated Microsoft Cloud with Microsoft Office. But even that was in the early days. And we'd had made a lot of missteps in supporting that for our customers. So we had a lot of things we had to work through in trust with our customers on that. So it was not easy. And AWS was clearly like, I mean, they, as a hoster, they had thousands of customers, and they had great customer support, and they understood what it meant to be supporting mission critical applications for customers. Microsoft didn't really understand what all of that meant, and we had to build a lot of that. And I remember the mid-year review where Satya was heading our enterprise and cloud business. And I had to come in and say that the baby was ugly. And he was so great because he was like, well, okay, I take that. We need to do work, but what can you do in the meantime? Like, because I was sales, right? So what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I mean, we need to get scrappy. I mean, we need to go sell Azure like we used to sell SQL before it was enterprise ready. I mean, that's essentially what we have to go do. We have to go in department by department, not try to go in central IT because we're not ready for centralized IT. We have to go in and we have to infuse workload by workload, department by department. And so we had to retrain all of our sellers who had just become accustomed to only talking to the CIO to go back and talk to the business. And to, we picked out key workloads and we said, these are the workloads that you should go. These are the key partnerships, the key ISVs that we're going to go into those departments with, and we're going to sell them on Azure. And maybe you don't even talk about it as Azure, right? You just talk about like how easy it is for them to set these things up and get them going, and we'll work our way back to central IT. So that was essentially how we had to build that out. I drew a lot on my experience in helping Microsoft move from the consumer packaged goods to the enterprise licensing, where we were moving from selling a lot of upgrades at once to selling annually in these contracts. Similar kind of change, but much more drastic. So the US was leading in cloud maturity. And so basically we had to take the playbook of 3 years ago and start implementing that again globally to then bring those countries on board and those partners on board to understand the value of the cloud and moving to the cloud. And so we had different countries at different places. So generally say, the UK was maybe only 6 months behind the US, but Germany was, maybe 12 to 18 months behind the US. And then you get into Latin America and they were like 24 months behind the US, right? And so we had to work the different rhythm at different places, and yet create like some standardization of the programs and the value proposition from corporate at a global level, but still accommodate for the fact that we were all at different places. So it was very similar to when I very first started at Microsoft. I joined our Windows client team when we were a few months from shipping Windows Vista. When we released it, nobody was ready. The hardware wasn't ready. The products, it was not compatible with all of the other applications that had been written in previous versions of Windows. And so we kind of broke a lot when we released Windows Vista. So what we ended up doing was taking a couple acquisitions that we were making for other reasons in other parts of our business, more on the server side. And I looked at those and I said, you know what? We need to create a suite of products that are going to be so compelling for our customers that they will buy this and will drag Windows software assurance along with it. They will want this so badly, they will get it and also buy Windows software assurance. We had to create a whole new product, had to rename it. And I said, we're going to bring 5 different acquisitions that we're doing all together into one suite, and we're going to sell it for $7 a year. I'm most proud of that because it changed everything. I mean, we went from trying to sell Windows Vista into the enterprise to selling what I created as the optimized desktop. At that time, we were the fastest product to 1 million seats that Microsoft had ever seen. I think the thing that stood out for me through all of those years was that, I've always said this, working at Microsoft is like working at the best VC in the world. Because, every group you work in works completely differently. If you have an idea, a good idea, you can sell people on the idea and you will always get funded to do what you need to do. It may not feel like easy, but you can always get it done. I think the thing I'm most proud of is that I was able to democratize technology, that I was a part of building this phenomenal ecosystem around Microsoft that has changed the way people do business, that a lot of the ways that I went about making that change created a path and a playbook for others of making change, even as we move into things like AI, where I'm not part of the company anymore, but I still see some of the breadcrumbs of what I created, creating that momentum for the company. And I'm just very proud of the legacy.